Welcome to this comprehensive scientific lecture on recent advances in AI-driven research gap analysis as of December 2025. Over the next 15 minutes, we'll explore how artificial intelligence is revolutionizing how we identify unexplored areas in scientific research. Let's start with the fundamentals. What exactly is research gap analysis? A research gap is essentially an unanswered question, or an area that hasn't been adequately explored in existing scientific literature. Traditionally, identifying research gaps required researchers to manually read hundreds or thousands of papers, synthesizing information to spot what's missing. But here's the problem. The volume of published research is growing exponentially. In 2025, we're seeing over 3 million new papers published annually across all disciplines. This visualization shows the exponential growth. A single researcher would need to read one paper every 10 minutes, 24 hours a day, just to keep up with one subdiscipline. This is where AI comes in. Recent advances in large language models and knowledge graphs are transforming how we approach this challenge. There are 3 key AI technologies driving progress in this field as of December 2025. First, transformer-based language models with over 500 billion parameters. These models can understand and synthesize scientific text at an unprecedented scale. Second, semantic knowledge graphs that map relationships between research concepts, methodologies, and findings across millions of papers. Third, multimodal AI systems that can integrate text, numerical data, and figures from papers to build comprehensive understanding. Now let's dive into the mechanics. How exactly does AI identify research gaps? Step 1 is corpus ingestion. The AI ingests millions of papers, converting them into high-dimensional vector embeddings. Each paper becomes a point in a 768-dimensional vector space where semantic similarity translates to geometric proximity. You might ask, why 768 dimensions? This number emerged from optimization studies showing it balances representation capacity with computational efficiency. Step 2 is topic clustering. The AI uses hierarchical clustering algorithms to organize papers into coherent research topics and subtopics. Step 3 involves citation network analysis. The AI builds a directed graph where nodes are papers and edges represent citations. Areas with few or no connections indicate potential research gaps. These are topics that haven't been adequately explored or connected to related work. Step 4 is methodology gap detection. The AI identifies when certain methodologies haven't been applied to specific problems. Step 5 involves temporal trend analysis. The system tracks how research focus evolves over time, identifying declining or emerging areas. Let me give you a concrete example from drug discovery, where AI gap analysis made a significant impact in 2025. Researchers at a major pharmaceutical company used AI gap analysis to identify understudied protein families that could be drug targets. The AI found that 80% of drug development focused on only 15% of the human proteome. It identified 200 understudied proteins with disease relevance but minimal research attention. By Q4 2025, this led to 12 new drug candidates entering development, targeting diseases that were previously considered intractable. Let's do a back-of-envelope calculation to understand the time savings AI provides. Let's make some reasonable assumptions for a traditional manual literature review. A researcher can thoroughly read and analyze about 2 papers per hour. To conduct comprehensive gap analysis in a subdiscipline, you need to review at least 5,000 papers. That's 5,000 divided by 2, which equals 2,500 hours of reading time. At 40 hours per week for 52 weeks, that's 1.2 years of full-time work, assuming you do nothing but read papers. Meanwhile, an AI system can process the same 5,000 papers in 4 to 6 hours, including embedding generation, clustering, and gap identification. That's a speed-up factor of approximately 500 times. This doesn't even account for the fact that I can simultaneously analyze connections that would take humans months to synthesize. Now let's explore some advanced techniques. The first is counterfactual gap analysis, which emerged in late 2024. Counterfactual analysis asks, what if? Questions about research trajectories. What if a particular study had been conducted? How would that change the field? The AI generates synthetic research scenarios by combining unexplored method problem pairs, then evaluates their potential impact. The AI systematically explores combinations of methods and problems, ranking unexplored pairs by predicted impact based on citation patterns and field momentum. One notable example was applying reinforcement learning to protein folding prediction, which led to AlphaFold 3's breakthrough performance in 2024. The second advanced technique is cross-domain gap bridging, which became practical in 2025 with improved multi-domain models. A key insight is that many scientific breakthroughs come from applying ideas from one field to another, but researchers often work in silos. AI systems can now identify analogous concepts across disciplines by comparing semantic structures in different research domains. For example, the AI identified that gene regulatory networks in biology share structural properties with supply chain networks in economics, suggesting optimization techniques could transfer between fields. Analysis shows that approximately 15% of high-impact papers published in 2025 explicitly used insights transferred from other domains, many identified through AI gap analysis. Now you might be wondering, how accurate are these AI predictions? Can we trust them? A validation study tracked gaps identified by AI systems in 2023 through 2025 to see which ones actually got filled and led to high-impact work. The precision was 67%, meaning 67% of AI identified gaps that got researched, produced high-impact work. The recall was 43%, meaning the AI caught 43% of the gaps that later proved to be high-impact research directions. These numbers are quite impressive for such a complex task, but they also show there's still room for improvement, which is driving current research. Let's be scientifically rigorous and discuss the current limitations and challenges of AI-driven gap analysis. First challenge: AI systems show bias toward well-represented topics because they're trained on existing literature, which itself has biases. Second challenge: AI struggles to identify truly novel paradigm shifts that require conceptual leaps beyond existing frameworks. Third challenge: comprehensive analysis across multiple domains requires massive computational resources, limiting accessibility. A comprehensive cross-domain analysis can cost around $100,000 in compute time, which is 50 times more expensive than single-domain analysis. Fourth challenge: the AI recommendations can be difficult to interpret. Researchers need to understand why a gap is important, not just that it exists. To address these challenges, researchers are developing explainable AI approaches specifically for gap analysis. One technique uses language models to generate natural language explanations for why a particular gap is significant. For example, the A I might explain: method X showed success in related problem Z due to property P. Problem Y shares property P but lacks research applying method X. This structured explanation helps researchers understand not just what the gap is, but why it matters, what evidence supports it, and what barriers exist. It's crucial to emphasize that AI doesn't replace human expertise in research gap analysis. Instead, it augments it. AI excels at pattern recognition across massive datasets, operating at scale, and providing systematic coverage of the literature. Humans excel at making creative conceptual leaps, applying contextual judgment about what's actually feasible, and understanding practical constraints. The optimal approach is a collaborative workflow where AI generates candidate gaps and humans evaluate, prioritize, and contextualize them. Let's look at some quantitative impact metrics as of December 2025 to understand how widely adopted this technology has become. Approximately 12,000 papers published in 2025 explicitly mentioned using AI-driven gap analysis in their introduction. About 500 research groups worldwide now have access to AI gap analysis tools, either through commercial platforms or open-source implementations. 8% of grant proposals to major funding agencies now explicitly mention AI-identified research gaps as part of their justification. This represents approximately 20-fold growth compared to 2023, indicating rapid adoption across the research community. Now let's look ahead to future directions for AI-driven gap analysis beyond December 2025. First direction is real-time gap tracking. Systems that continuously monitor new publications and update gap landscapes in near real time. Second is personalized recommendations. AI that understands individual researcher strengths and suggests gaps aligned with their expertise. Third is causal gap analysis. Moving beyond correlation to understand causal relationships that explain why certain gaps exist and persist. This evolution from correlation-based to causal understanding will enable more reliable predictions about which gaps are truly important. Fourth is multi-stakeholder analysis, incorporating perspectives from industry, policymakers, and society, not just academic researchers. We need to address important ethical considerations around AI-driven gap analysis. First concern: these systems might reinforce existing inequalities if researchers at well-funded institutions have better access to AI tools. Second concern: if everyone uses the same AI system, we might see homogenization of research agendas, reducing diversity of approaches. Third concern: over-reliance on AI. I might discourage researchers from pursuing unconventional ideas that don't fit existing patterns. Mitigation strategies include developing open-source tools to democratize access and encouraging diversity in AI systems, so different platforms suggest different gaps. For researchers interested in using these tools, let me provide practical guidance on getting started. Step 1. Define your domain scope carefully. Be specific about what subdiscipline you're analyzing to get meaningful results. Step 2. Choose an appropriate platform. Options range from commercial platforms like Semantic Scholar AI to open-source tools like ResearchRabbit. Step 3. Always validate AI suggestions with your domain expertise. The AI provides hypotheses, you provide the critical evaluation. Step 4. Combine AI analysis with traditional literature review. Use AI to identify candidate gaps quickly, then do deep reading to confirm. Let's do a cost-benefit analysis for a typical research group considering adopting AI gap analysis. A commercial platform subscription costs about $5,000 per year for a research group. Initial training takes about 40 hours for the team to learn the platform effectively. But once trained, you save approximately 200 hours per major research project in literature review and gap identification. The break-even point is typically 1 to 2 major projects per year, making it cost-effective for most active research groups. Let me share another detailed case study, this time from climate science. Climate scientists wanted to identify understudied feedback mechanisms that could significantly impact climate models, but received little research attention. The AI identified permafrost methane release as critically understudied relative to its potential impact, with only 200 papers compared to 5,000 on water vapor feedback. This led to a new multi-institution research initiative launched in September 2025, specifically targeting this gap with $15 million in funding. AI gap analysis is now being integrated into the broader scientific workflow at multiple stages. At the literature review stage, AI helps researchers quickly understand the landscape and identify where their work fits. During hypothesis generation, AI suggests unexplored combinations of variables or methods worth investigating. In grant writing, AI-identified gaps provide strong justification for why research is needed and hasn't been done before. Even in peer review, reviewers are starting to check whether authors adequately address known gaps identified by AI systems. How do we measure whether AI-identified gaps lead to successful research? Let's look at impact indicators. First indicator: papers explicitly addressing AI-identified gaps receive on average 2.3 times more citations in their first year. That's 11.5 citations versus 5.0 for control papers in the same subfield. Second indicator: proposals targeting AI-identified gaps have 18% higher success rates at major funding agencies. Third indicator: gap-focused papers generate 1.7 times more follow-on research within 2 years. For those interested in technical details, let me briefly describe the typical architecture of modern gap analysis systems. Component 1 is a document encoder using transformer architecture, typically based on models like SciBERT or PubMedBERT fine-tuned for scientific text. Component 2 is a knowledge graph with over 50 million nodes representing concepts, methods, datasets, and their relationships. Component 3 is a specialized neural network trained to detect gaps by comparing observed versus expected patterns in the knowledge graph. The architecture flows from raw papers through embedding, into the knowledge graph, and finally through the gap detector, which outputs ranked gap candidates. Component 4 is a ranking system that filters and prioritizes gaps based on potential impact, feasibility, and novelty scores. An important question researchers often ask: can AI identify interdisciplinary gaps better than single-discipline analysis? The answer is yes. AI shows particular strength in interdisciplinary gap identification, but with important caveats. The strength is that AI naturally identifies structural similarities across disciplines that human experts, working in silos, often miss. The caveat is that it requires high-quality training data across multiple domains, which is challenging to obtain and standardize. Best results come from combining AI suggestions with expert panels that include researchers from multiple relevant disciplines. There's an interesting connection between AI gap analysis and the reproducibility crisis in science. AI systems have revealed that many apparent gaps exist because earlier results couldn't be reproduced, leaving questions unresolved. Modern systems can flag topics where different papers make contradictory claims, suggesting either methodological issues or genuine complexity. When the AI detects high variance in reported effect sizes, it flags this as a reproducibility gap requiring careful replication studies. This capability helps the scientific community prioritize replication efforts more efficiently, focusing on areas where reproducibility concerns are most acute. Let's discuss the substantial data requirements for effective AI gap analysis. For meaningful gap analysis in a subdiscipline, you need a minimum corpus of about 10,000 papers. Optimal results require 100,000 or more papers to capture the full landscape of a field. But quality matters more than quantity. Papers need complete metadata, including abstracts, citations, and author information. A major challenge is accessing paywalled literature. Many AI systems rely on open-access papers, which may not represent the full landscape. Let me make some predictions for where this field will be by December 2026. Prediction 1. Adoption will reach 50% of research groups at major universities, up from about 15% currently. Prediction 2. Real-time gap updating will become standard, with systems monitoring new publications daily. Prediction 3. Gap analysis will be integrated directly into institutional research management systems and grant portals. Prediction 4. Major improvements in cross-domain transfer learning will make interdisciplinary gap identification much more accurate. Let me conclude with practical, bottom-line advice for researchers. First, start experimenting now. Even free tools like Semantic Scholar and Connected Papers provide valuable gap insights. Second, use AI for discovery, but always validate with human expertise. Don't blindly follow AI suggestions. Third, focus on gaps that align with your existing strengths and resources. A gap isn't valuable if you can't effectively address it. Fourth, document your gap analysis process in papers and grants. This transparency helps build trust in AI-assisted research. As we conclude this lecture, let me share some final thoughts on the broader implications. AI gap analysis is democratizing access to research opportunity identification. Early career researchers can now compete with established labs in finding important problems. It's accelerating the pace of scientific discovery by helping researchers avoid duplication and focus on truly novel contributions. But human creativity, intuition, and judgment remain absolutely essential. AI augments our capabilities. It doesn't replace them. The future of research is collaborative, with humans and AI working together to push the boundaries of knowledge faster and more effectively than either could alone.